Welcome everybody to, I believe this is episode 2 of Lunch and Learns. First one I actually did myself. It was on a video editing workflow. So if you're watching this episode, you can go back on our YouTube channel and check that one out. It's about editing videos in Adobe Premiere, both for YouTube and also Reels, like Instagram, TikTok stuff. But welcome, Vic, today for part 2 of our Lunch and Learn series, our informal series, where we share our skills with each other. And it doesn't mean that anyone is the end-all be-all of that skill, but it's just something that they've developed proficiency in over time and want to share with the group. So Vic, we thank you for joining us. And I'd love for you to start telling us your background with photography and sort of where this all started for you.
Sure. Okay. Well, hello everybody. Thanks for joining. And for those of you guys watching at home, we still love you. So today I'm going to be talking about photography and what I'd like to say first and foremost before I get into actually, who I am, what I've learned so far. I just want to make it clear that things like this, photography, video, anything creative, even cooking, you're always learning. There's always things to learn. And like Bill said, I'm not the master chef of all this. So hopefully I can share some tips that I learned, by making my own mistakes or just cool things that I've picked up over the years. So when it comes to photography, it goes a bit back. I started really young. My dad used to film a lot of our occasions like birthday parties and confirmations and all that on this little tiny JVC camera. I know it sounds really cliche, but this is actually true. So I've always looked up to my dad, like seeing what he was doing and like how does he have this patience to constantly film every single occasion. It's way back when we didn't have phones, right? And my dad is very traditional. Like he still to this day has like a very minimal cell phone plan. So I actually admire that. Yeah, you text him, there's like no response. So going back to my upbringing and whatnot. So I think over the years watching my dad do that for our family and being appreciative to the kind of how a camera can freeze time and how a video camera can just like capture sound motion. I've always had that interest like as a kid. And then you get to school and they're like, what are you gonna be when you grow up? What are you gonna do? And I had so much pressure on me because I wanted to do something that was completely different than, like my friends. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a surgeon, and like all this smart stuff. Not saying that creatives are not smart, but just in the academic world, we're kind of pushed to the side, I feel. But I kind of went against everything and I pursued photography. That's what I studied in college. So yeah, I did my 3-year program, started in wedding photography, working a lot with people, portraits. Always been a little home cook chef, watching my grandparents and my mom cook. So that's where the food comes in. I always did that kind of, like behind the scenes. I would cook for my family, try these little dessert recipes, but I never got to photographing and like kind of creating this gallery of like recipes that I have now until really COVID. So, it's never been at this level because I think as a creative, I don't know if everybody can feel me on this one. Sometimes we're always told what we can and can do and the niche that we need to follow. And if you're a photographer, you're only a photographer. You can't become like a recipe developer. You can't become like anything else. And I'm just annoying like that. So I like to do everything, so that's why I'm like going on and on. But that's kind of how it all started. And I was home. I had lost my job multiple times. I had a lot of time on my hands, and big reason why I wasn't really pursuing like food was because I was so scared of, are people going to take me seriously as a food photographer? Because I've been doing weddings and baptisms my entire life. So in terms of lighting and photography, I feel like you don't need to niche yourself down. You don't need to say, I'm only a food photographer and I will be that for the rest of my life. People change, people grow. You move on. What interests you 10 years ago is not going to interest you in 5, and that's just how it goes. So yeah, I started my food photography journey and it was really bad. I can't even show you because I have a Mac, but if I had a laptop, I started in the corner of my room, literally putting up like foam boards and you know, budgets are low. So we'd be going to Dollarama, getting like anything I could find for like $1, $2. And tax here is pretty high. It's like 15%. So I always have to like calculate. Um, so yeah, so it really was really weird. My parents were always like, "Why are you bringing this block of cheese into your room?" But anyways, countless hours. Now I actually have a spot in the kitchen, which is super useful because I'm near the sink. But before I was like going back and forth like a ping pong. Anyways, that's a little bit about me. I know I'm part of, you know, Food Social, and I feel really accepted and not awkward, and so this is great. But yeah, that's a little introduction to make you guys understand kind of the flow of things. And she's so cute. I love you too, don't worry. So yeah, so I don't know how we should start this. I guess if you guys have any questions right off the bat that you've always wondered for photography or anything, like I guess I'll open the floor for that, and then I can kind of showcase some examples like the shoot that I said I did. Yeah,
So
Michelle.
I prefer natural light over anything. And but I know depending on, like today it's cloudy, which sometimes offers, you know, a great filter for the natural light. But since we've moved into our new home, there's a ton of natural light, but at some point, some days it seems like so stark, like too much light, and then other days it's more muted. And so I'm always trying to navigate, like, do I use a filter when it's too bright? Like, because I have some pop-up filters that, you know, make it look like it's cloudy, but I'm just never sure at what point you make that flip, because I don't have a lot of lights to like turn on and make it different when it's I feel like mine are never consistently the same. Like some pictures pop because the light was brilliant and I had nothing to do with it. So because I depend on nature, you know, I'm kind of I don't know. So
You probably feel a bit stuck. I
yeah.
was like feeling that about a year ago. Because I agree, like natural light is beautiful, and
Yeah.
anybody, nobody fight me on this. Like natural light is honestly the best. The sun does its work. You go outside, you bring a dish outside, you can never like really replicate it back in studio. You know, there's
Mhm.
some intense commercial food photographers are like 60 lights, one this, one that. It's just not realistic for us at home, right? So,
Mhm.
uh, I've had that struggle too, where it's like I was depending on checking the weather. You know, is it going to be too gloomy? Is it going to be super sunny? Because, like you said, Michelle, you're totally right. Sometimes it's like attacks your food,
Yeah, it's
and
just
it's
like
so
depending on the
bright.
color of your food too, or the dishes you're using, it just like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, this isn't working. And then with food, you're gonna miss it because food
Hmm.
will look like it's been out for an hour,
Yeah.
some things. And so you're like, I have to do it again.
I think right away what jumps out at me, for like the strong food photography and you have like that harsh lighting, honestly, you're probably gonna laugh, but like I said, I started in the corner of my room, right? So depending on where you're shooting, and that's another thing, you don't necessarily need to shoot in your kitchen, as I'm probably sure everybody is aware. You can literally move around the house. I have basically like my curtains in front of my window, and the light comes this way. So honestly, what I used to use before I had any like sort of filters or reflectors or diffusers, I used to use that curtain. Like it was see-through enough that it would diffuse the light. And I would really just take like painter's tape, stick it to my window, stick it to another piece of foam, and it would do the job. Like sometimes if you're feeling like it's a little too strong, if you have like an extra bed sheet or something, like you guys are laughing, but it's true. It
No,
honestly helps.
I like hearing that because behind the scenes, you would be amazed at what I have happening outside
Yeah.
of the picture sometimes to either hold something in place or I don't know. So that's nice to hear that I'm not
Hmm.
the only one. Like I feel like I'm go gadget most of the time, just kind
No, I know. I feel the exact same way. There's like, and then if you move like one way, something falls and the rest of your scene breaks. It's just, yeah. I feel like we need to do a better job at exposing that side. Me too, you know, like I didn't know that other people were doing this until like I started really talking to one-on-one like people and
yeah.
creatives. But Yeah, what I like to do also, if you don't have anything that's kind of like gonna cover the window or whatnot, essentially with lighting, this is probably gonna sound really basic, but the basics of lighting, if something is lighting your subject too strong and you're not able to move that light, you just move the subject further away. And it's probably something that not a lot of people really like think of because we feel stuck. We're like, oh my God, my scene is here and I can't move anything. And again, depending on where you're shooting, because I'm not sure, but sometimes
Well,
just
that's
like move your scene away from the light and it'll
true.
help. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
great. I've never
Yeah.
thought of that, but yes.
Yeah.
And that's probably because you
Okay.
do take time setting up the scene, and then if you have to move it, then you're like,
That is exactly why. Yeah.
even moving it 2 feet down is just like, is it going to look exactly the same? So,
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle for sure, but
yeah.
it's going to be a lot
Okay.
of trial and error. Like I'm not lying to you. It's sometimes, oh, but it looked better near the window. Okay, like let me back it up and try to replicate it. Don't get too, how do you say it? I'm sure we're all perfectionists, but don't get too set on like that was my original idea and how can I replicate it? Because chances are you're not gonna be able to do it 100% and we're human. So let's not get too on it, but I totally feel what you're saying. So those are two things for harsh lighting. In terms of gloomy day, I don't know. So you say you rely on like the sun, but on those gloomy days, what have you been doing to like, do you just not shoot? What do you do to work around it?
No, I do just shoot, but then because clouds come and go, then a shot an hour or half hour later is going to look differently because the clouds moved. I'm in the same spot. It's not even that much later, but because the lighting has changed, then my next thing for a reel, like I have a reel ready to go, but the light shifted, and as much as I try to edit the picture, you can tell it's like the lighting was different, and so
Are
I
you
don't
using?
do anything to change it. I just
No, that's okay.
it looks it looks unprofessional, but it's just I don't know.
Are you using like you're just shooting with natural light? You're not using any fillers? Are you like bouncing backlight? Or are you?
I do always have a back. I typically have a white foam board for bouncing light back. Um, but even that, changes, it can change. And um I'm not really good at Adobe, Bill, so I know I need to watch that other.
Like editing, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. Because I know you can. McKenna, my daughter, that we did the cookbook together, she is a pro at all that, but she has a real time job, and I can't pestering her to edit all my photos and videos for me. So
Yeah, that's reasonable. So yeah, I started with, only using the sun, and the issue was exactly what you said. It would shift, it would move. Can't really rely on it. And especially here, we have winter like all year long, and it's just so depressing. It's really bad. In Montreal, weather is just you cannot predict it. Like today, it was sunny, and then I needed to do my shoot, and it was just like vomit. So it was just bad. It makes you so angry, because maybe you had that vision, and you're like, oh, the lighting like this would be super perfect, and just it just doesn't work out all the time like that. So exactly what you said, like I would use a bounce board. I actually have now, are you using just a solid whiteboard? Oh wait, you're on mute. You're on mute.
it's just a piece of poster board that's
Mm.
foam, that's sturdy, so I can lean it
Yeah.
and you know.
Okay, cool. Because I actually have that. Again, please do not laugh, but I have had this since college. It's this terribly cut. This was from an old project, so don't look at that. But I kind of stole it from the studio. I didn't really steal it. It
Oh,
was there and nobody was going to use it. So I'm basically recycling. Um, I attached an aluminum to mine, like literally aluminum foil.
okay.
You could probably get a bigger piece at like a Costco or something. But
Yeah.
so one side I use for just soft lighting to bounce back, and then one
Mhm.
side is like when I want that harsher lighting. So it acts as like a reflector, but also a fill light. I don't know if that makes sense because we're filling in the shadows with this side, and the other side is kind of bouncing back some light. I
Oh,
feel
that's
like just using that with the natural light, even though your eye might see, okay, it's a bit gloomy, it adds like that extra layer of consistency that I feel like now when I look at my photos, I can tell that my setup is more or less the same. Like that's what you want, right? When you look at your work or your recipes, you take a step back and you see them all. For example, if you look at your food social page, you want them all to kind of like be consistent with each other. Now, I'm not promising it's going to be 100% effective because at the end of the day,
yeah.
I see Pooja's comment, sorry. At the end of the day, thank you for noticing. At the end of the day, what was I saying? At the end of the day, you're never going to be able to replicate that 100% again because we're using natural light. Now I got super aggravated because there were some days that were really, really like intense, and even the foam board was like not helping me. It was not helping my case. I got so desperate that I started using like my phone light. Like it was just so bad. Like I, I was just screaming, crying. I was like, anything working? But I honestly found on Amazon this small softbox lighting. It costed me like $60. I don't remember the name right off the tip of my head. It was like Mount Dog lighting or one of those cheap softbox lights from Amazon. They look a little bit sketchy, but they do the job because we're not doing flash photography. We're not doing anything commercial and crazy. We essentially just need that filler light. So I can get the name of it
Yeah,
if you
if you
want.
could drop that in the on the Slack channel
Yeah,
afterwards, great.
yeah, for sure. I'll go check. But honestly, it was the best choice because some lights are like $3,000 and it's like, okay, you're not gonna go drop 3,000 on this like filler light. So I've kind of been working with, let's say, natural light as as my main, and then I bring in that softbox as a fill because it would be essentially mimicking the vibe you would get with natural light. And I also use it for action shots. Like people have this misconception that like just because you're using a softbox that there's no flash, right? So when we're doing motion shots, we want to get flash to capture the action like really quick. Softbox doesn't do any like flash, nothing. It just stays consistent. Like it's a constant light. So we can use it for video, which is good. You could use it for your reels as well without there being that annoying beep, 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 whatever. And you can also do it for photography. And yeah, and then if you're not too happy, well, then we're gonna have to talk about editing.
No, this is all great. This is
Oh
wonderful.
yeah, I'm gonna write that down so that I don't forget to find you the light.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It might be like a different name now, but you know,
Oh,
they
that's
change the
fine.
names, but it's the same product.
Okay.
So yeah, softbox. Okay. Oh, we have somebody else. Hello.
Hi, Dee.
Hi,
Hi. How are you?
I am good. My work meeting ended early, so I was like, yay, I can jump on here.
Too funny. Leaving one meeting to go to the next. I feel that. Yeah, we were just talking about sorry you joined like midway. I feel bad, but we're gonna have it recorded, right? So I was just telling Michelle about like lighting and using a main light, using a filler light, what it does, and kind of my experience dabbling on my own. What I Does anybody have any questions so far, by the way? I feel like I'm just like blah blah blah. No?
Why don't we look at some examples and then maybe questions
Sure.
come up during that?
Yeah, so I don't really know how to show this in a cool way. What I can show you guys is a shoot that I did on Friday. I have two examples for you. I have one that is basically on site at a restaurant for a local pizzeria in my area. And then I also have another example today that I did at home in my kitchen. So I'll show you the pizzeria first. I'm also not very good at these presentation sharing things. So give me a minute. I guess I can just hit which one I want. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
What do you guys see? Do you see like a bunch of like cocktails and stuff?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Can I zoom in on this? Yeah. All right. So, like I said, it was for a local pizzeria. in my area. And the not really the issue with this location, but the biggest struggle is when you take your scene or food or whatnot outside out of your comfort zone, which my comfort zone would be back at home in my little corner. You never know what the location's really going to look like. And again, like we're talking about using natural light here and kind of, you know, relying on that light. So on Friday in Montreal, it was very, very sunny towards the evening, but then it kind of just died. So it became really flat lighting. And I was shooting at this pizzeria that was really dark. So just to give you guys like, I guess, an idea, for example, at the bottom left, you guys see my mouse, right? Okay, good. The bottom left here, this was like, I don't know how to say it, like a patio area for the restaurant. And then these tables were like bar tables. And then towards the right is where we lose all the lighting. So basically from this point on, it was like darkness. Like I was so limited into where I was able to shoot. And since I was shooting like a lot of cocktails and pizzas, it was really important to get a lot of the textures on the pizza. And it was a little bit of a struggle, but I thought, you know what, this is actually a good example to show you guys what I ended up doing. So I kind of did not continue in further in on the right side of the restaurant where it was all dark and black. Instead, I had the kitchen bring me the food towards the closest what's called the closest seat near the patio. So I wasn't outside. What was great about this place is they had large windows, but the lighting, like I said, it was falling flat. So it kind of just had like this really moment, and then it went blah, like you can't go very far. So another thing that I forgot to mention, what's it called? When you are doing your lighting, for food specifically, or like drinks, anything that people eat and drink, we always like to light it from the back. And the reason for that, I mean, you could photograph your food however you want, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, technically speaking, if we want to be technical about it, we should be trying our best to light our food from the back. So meaning your light source, like kind of in the back of your subject. So the subject here is this Aperol Spritz. Whoops. Okay, I guess I can't move. It's this Aperol Spritz. So I'm going to show you two examples. This is the first one again. We're focused on this image. Do you guys see how like Aperols are obviously orange, yellow, whatever, but do you guys see like that little, like almost looks like an orange slice? It's like really glowy. So the reason why this is happening, it's actually good. I feel like it's super appealing that the light is shining through. Also, these are not edited yet, so whatever, it's just kind of going through its first phase. The reason why that's happening is because we have our direct light over here that's kind of shining through the glass. So remember that image, and I want to just show you another example of basically almost the same subject but in different lighting. And it might be a little bit like, what the heck? Okay. All right, you guys see the new frames? Yeah. Okay, so that's basically the same glass, and there's no glow. There's nothing. Do you guys see what I was saying though? It was all like dark around. It was very moody. It was a mood, but we were trying to get summer shots. You know, I wanted to make these photos inviting and not really like romantic evening with your boo. So even in this photo on the right, you could see the difference, like right off the bat. It's just, this is all like summer happy, and this is like, ooh, like romance and mystery, and we don't know what's going on here. So that was just an example to show you how like lighting it from the front. So now we're basically facing, how can I say it? It's so hard to explain without my hands. I'm so Italian. So the lighting is in front of the glass instead of behind. And we're not getting that glow. We're not getting that like oomph or like pizzazz. Whereas in the other example that I showed you, we were. So that is something that is really cool to note. Always try to light your subject from the back, even on actual food like pizzas, pastas, whatever it is. Anything with a lot of texture too, it'll come up when you're when you're lighting it from the back. So yeah, that was one of my examples. I don't know if we have questions.
I was gonna add that
Yeah.
using lighting in that way where it's backlit can be a really helpful technique for shooting something like a soup or something that has like liquid, because you catch the light across it. Whereas if the light is behind you, you don't have the benefit of the light traveling across the surface. And so that's like the other one. It's like it can come through the drink, but it can also like help with textures on top of the food too, especially like glosses and things like that.
So so you were at a restaurant, so outside you had that natural light that's just coming through. But when I'm shooting in my house, to have light behind it, then how do you still have a pretty background? Like, because I shoot with light from the side, and that's why I use the bounce. But how would I light from behind and have the light not show in the picture?
So that's another thing that I was testing at home. I sometimes find myself, I usually shoot with just like a baseboard at the bottom and then a backdrop that I have, either that I made or that I purchased, whatever. And the way that, of course, like depending where you're shooting, but my window light is usually always on the right of me, wherever I'm shooting, right or left, like whichever. It's never really in front. So I'm always like constantly like taking a table, and you have to remind yourself to like, okay, if I really want that texture, that sort of lighting that we were talking about, we always have to like shift. So again, don't be like too stuck, and don't, if something's looking like super propped up like the way it's supposed to be in frame, you can just adjust it, like to work around the lighting. And getting back to your question, one thing that I tried, it might be a little bit like hard to explain, but so the baseboard is always like where my food is resting is always on a table, let's say, and then the table has like a foam and the backdrop. That doesn't really move for me. It's more so the backdrop behind that moves, because if I do want to get that textured lighting, I got to make sure that it's coming through and not hitting that board, right? So again, depending on the sizing of your window, the sizing of your backdrop, what I'm doing is I work with a patio window, which is basically ceiling to the floor, right? And then my backdrop, instead of it being kind of, how can I explain this? Instead of it being rested straight, sometimes I'll have to shoot like this. Like, does that make sense? Or like this, and let the light in, and that's it. And it might look a little bit like crooked. Sorry, I always want to go to
back
French.
part would be like, because my natural light is obviously to my right, you can see it here. So instead of having the back, here's my board. So instead of straight, you would just tilt it this way a little bit. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, exactly. Not too much there, because then it's really obvious on the picture. But yeah, I kind of leave a little bit of space for the light to get in,
Okay.
because we always want to keep it straight, right? Like our mind, like we see it in like in our head. We're like, okay, let's keep it straight, everything needs to be perfect. But don't be afraid to like move it around, play around, and shift
Okay.
what needs to be shifted. And then it's all in
Great.
the way that you photograph it, that you can kind of hide these things, that okay, the backdrop's not as like crooked as it really is in real life. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm putting up a scene and my brothers walking in, they're like, that's the final shot. I'm like, yep, it's all eyes. Sorry.
No judgy, no judgy.
Yeah, like please.
Super.
But
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Again, like honestly, just feel free to try whatever works, and even if you guys think it might be a dumb idea, like today, the next thing that I'm going to show you, I thought it was absolutely really stupid, but it actually worked. So yeah, before I continue, anybody else have a question? Or we're good? It could also be a general question, by the way. It doesn't have to be about what I'm talking about. Okay, so that was restaurant on-site photography, which is cool, but I know most of you guys are probably shooting at home. So like I said earlier before this call, I had to do a quick food shoot for a client, and the session, I'm not gonna lie, it was my last recipe of the set. I had already been going for like 7 or so hours. Like I was just out of ideas, out of any creative juice, but I had to get this done. And so I'll show you 3 different, actually no, just 2, I believe. 3 different shots of what I came up with. So it was for a oh, hold on, I can't even see my picture. You guys see it? Oh, okay, great. Sorry, I told you I'm really bad at the screen sharing thing. So I'm always panicked, like, is it on the screen? Okay, so it was a vegan eggplant parm that I had to make, and I followed the client's recipe. And essentially, like I said, I didn't have too much like creative juice flowing in me. I wanted to keep it very minimal, very clean, just because the other photos that I had done for this client were very like all over the place happening, and I felt like we needed something to mute it. So again, that's another thing to note. You don't always have to put in this elaborate scene and window here and like oil here with the spoon. Sometimes just a very basic photo like this can do the trick. And I actually do have, how can I show this to you guys? Actually, now that I'm presenting this to you, I actually took a photo of the actual space because I feel like that will give you guys a better idea as to what I was working with, because this is like a nice photo and we don't really get the idea. So let me just send that to myself so I can open it on my computer for you guys. But yeah, just to explain, I did this in my kitchen, and like I told you guys, I normally shoot in front of my my patio. But I don't know, something was telling me, you know what, let's try something different today and let's try using like this smaller window near my sink. So I'm just gonna try to pull up the photo of the actual setup, just so you guys can see exactly what I was talking about. I totally forgot that I took this too. I was like, oh, let me take this for the workshop. I totally forgot.
It looks really good. I'm getting hungry. Just look at it.
Honestly, for a vegan eggplant parm, not bad. Okay, so all right, we should be able to see this. Do we all see the little setup here?
Yeah.
So what you just saw was shot here. Really not glamorous, really not cute. The eggplant kind of died here. But I'll kind of go through the process and like why I shot it this way. So obviously I was pressed for time, so I couldn't put too many things together, but essentially the base is two wooden boards that I had painted myself. They're obviously all stained, and I mean, please don't stain your backdrops, but this was wood, so I couldn't really do anything about it. I usually just retouch it in editing, but yeah, if you don't know how to edit, try your best not to get sauces and stuff on the boards. So that was my base. And then I had, obviously my subject is here. She's looking a little gross right now because it's the end of the shoot. And I figured, let me take this shot for you guys. In the background at first, there was, okay, this is, I'm just going to come out and say it. It's two paper towels. That's what the background is. So it's very obvious in this photo now that we see the backdrop and like what the setup looks like. But in that other photo that I showed you, I don't think anyone could have guessed that I used Scott towels, you know? So sometimes if you don't have a white background or a pretty kitchen, like my kitchen's very old and rustic, you just, if that's the vibe and energy you want to mimic, then you gotta do what you gotta do. And the reason why I was able to kind of make it look like it was a white background, I don't know how much knowledge you guys know about actual camera settings or just, you know, even on your phone, you guys have a bunch of modes. Like, for example, the first thing that I know is portrait mode. I know it says portrait mode, but sometimes you could use it on food, which I don't know if anybody has like dabbled in. I usually shoot on my camera, but you know, I have minimal knowledge in, you know, using like a phone for food photography. But when I have tried the portrait mode, I know that I can focus on my subject, being the eggplant parm, and kind of blur the rest of the background. So that's essentially what I did just on my camera. So I figured, I was looking at the subject, okay, I'm not liking this like gray black thing. It's clashing too hard with the white at the bottom. And I literally looked around my kitchen. I had 5 seconds to think. I ripped the Scott towels and I put them in the back. And that was basically my crazy setup. And again, like you could see, the reason for the food being here is because I'm getting that backlight here. So that was the reason why I chose to do all these things. It wasn't just like randomly placed or whatnot. And you can also, again, if I didn't use it in this photo, I kind of had minimal arms, minimal hands. I usually prop it on our tripod, but you can see that we're getting a bit of a shadow here. at the bottom. And normally I would fill that, but I did not have time to like set up my light and everything. So I was actually holding another Scott towel in my like arm and my camera in one, and away we go. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes of how that came to be. It's
So Vic,
not
I
always
have
very
a question
glamorous.
about the picture which you just showed.
Yeah, yeah.
You said about the shadow that you'll fill it in. How do you do that? Do you actually have artificial light, or do you bounce off some extra light? How do you actually do that? Because I struggle a lot with those shadows, and they are not a pretty sight.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a perfect, like, obvious question. So, like I was saying, the subject is being lit from the behind, right? So we got that little bit of a shadow at the bottom left of the frame. It's a preference. If you like it, you like it, you leave it. If you don't, most people don't like it. Yeah, I was just actually doing a light fill. Usually I would prop up my constant light, so the little softbox I was talking about earlier. Don't know if you were here for that. And I kind of just bounce the light back. So if the light's coming here, shooting the eggplant parm, the shadow's here, we're propping the light this way to bump up the lighting back into the shadows and essentially fill the shadows. But if you don't have enough time for that, you could try to do what I did. You could use some Scott towels, holding in a one hand against. You could use a foam board, like I was showing, like something like this, like just a piece of foam board,
Yeah.
and push the light back into the subject for to avoid, I guess, or to reduce your shadows. And then there's of course editing, but if you're not comfortable with that, just to take it to the next level. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Sorry, sometimes I feel like I'm just blah blah blah.
I have
it's all
one
good.
question, Vic.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we've shot, we've tried to shoot by the window, and usually this happens if like we are in the shot, right? And maybe that's because probably we can't control the settings too much, and we use our phones to shoot. We haven't gotten to the point where we have know how to shoot well with a camera. So that's a goal. But right now we're just using our phones, especially to create reels, right?
Right.
What I've noticed is if I'm next to a window and it's like bright outside in the afternoon, the video kind of, like, whether it's video or photo, it kind of washes out. It's just too bright. And I know that like if you're using artificial lighting, you can use that diffuser or things to make that light less harsh, I guess. But if it's like a natural big window, do you have you experienced that? Have you figured out how to, make it less harsh so that the picture doesn't wash out?
Yeah, so because you're using a phone, obviously it is a little bit different, but it's not too different in terms of the technical aspects of lighting. So I totally know what you mean. Sometimes it's washed out. It's really annoying. And for the longest time ever, I really hated shooting in like direct sunlight. Now I've put on my big girl pants and, face the demons, but for a really long time it was scary to me. Sometimes I've used, not all the time that I shoot, but sometimes if I'm in a big window area and I feel like the lighting is too harsh, and if I'm not able, my first question is, can I move my subject further back, further away from the window? If I'm not able to do that, then we're stuck with what we got and we have to be resourceful of like where we are. Because I have all these like little trinkets around from, the experience and whatnot on shoot and panicking, like I need to figure something out, I always carry with me like this little kit that I've done. It's just in a really big Ziploc with like things that I might need for food shoots if I'm away from my house or whatnot. So anyways, to answer your question, something that you can try is I don't know exactly what it's called, but like when people are moving and they don't want people seeing inside their house, like they always like I don't know what the paper is called. There's a certain paper that has like almost like texture to it, but it kind of looks like a wax paper. I don't know how to explain it to you. I'm gonna try to look for the name, but anyways, I usually take painter's tape and just plaster that over the window and tape it up, and it'll help diffuse the light you know, by X amount, you're not going to get rid of it 100%. But that would be my first reaction. Can I move my subject further away from the window? Can we put maybe a folding table and extend that wherever you're shooting, like if it's on the island or whatnot? Can we just divide subject from light? If not, okay, we're stuck. Can we put something in front of the window to kind of diffuse? You can also use, like I was saying to Michelle earlier, I've been using like my curtains for the longest time, like see-through curtains. Anything that you can put in front of the window. It doesn't necessarily need to be a reflector or a diffuser. Like, you don't need these crazy things. And sometimes the diffusers are just too thin and you need something a little bit thicker. You can even do 2-ply, put it once, put it twice, that paper that I don't have the name for, unfortunately. But yeah, anything that works like that. Yeah.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I've seen that paper too. I just don't know what it's called.
I don't know what it's called either. Okay, I'm writing that down too because I gotta find it. I don't know. I'm just gonna write like moving paper. Yeah, to diffuse. So yeah, those are some things that I've tried. Oh, I saw Michelle's message. Oh, she left. Okay. All right. So yeah, I didn't really have any other examples, but if you guys had any other questions to ask me, feel free. Or if you just want to talk about photos in general or whatnot. Pooja. This has been so
For me,
informative.
Vic, I feel that it's always a race against the time because I'm trying to capture the natural lighting, right? So it always feels like have to rush through it and before that dark zone hits. So with artificial lighting, I know you just talked about the softbox which you use. Do you have any other recommendations for artificial lighting? Say, at least we try to get the shooting done at the prime time of the day so that we can still get the photography done or the final product. And of course, when you were talking about moving the subjects to different places, my biggest fear is dropping the pan of the whole food and losing all of it.
100%.
So that's my biggest fears. But as you said, we have to move sometimes. I do go in hunting for light in different rooms and where it
sometimes you're
works the
just
best.
like looking and you're in panic. You're like holding your casserole. You're like, what the heck? Where can I go with this? You know, because it didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly. So any recommendations for the for artificial light which you would suggest is good to go for?
Okay, so you're asking me like a tool for artificial light,
Yeah.
or is there
Do you
any
have
okay,
any
anything else?
recommendations which would be close? I know there's nothing compared to the natural light, but the close second to it, which would be helpful in making the environment better.
Yeah. So since I shoot a lot with natural light, I don't really have crazy equipment when it comes to artificial. Like I told you guys, the softbox is really like my helper. It's really just like a little filler. There was another little light that I bought off Amazon. It was more expensive, believe it or not. It was literally, I have it in my camera bag, maybe. I don't know, hold on. Give me a second. One sec. I would be back right here. Yeah. Perfect. So this light at the time, I don't know how much it is now. I don't know if they still sell it, but it's this little packet. And if you're scared to kind of move around or whatnot, this is good because it's a little, I think it's for video lighting, like specifically. Again, I'm not going to turn it on because it's very bright and I don't want to blind anybody. But I kind of open this flap and I use it on my other hand to hold and kind of direct the light. So if you can find something similar, you can also have, there's like toggles that like kind of show you the intensity of the light. This doesn't have to be like super crazy. I mean, like you just move it around instead of you jumping around everywhere and moving the light with the stand. You kind of just move the light around and everything's
this
fine.
is
You know?
clever. This is
Yeah,
clever.
that's
Yeah.
the only other artificial light I own because the rest are just way too expensive. And your girl does not have that kind of coin. So yeah, I'll try to find this link to you for you guys as well.
Yeah, that
It's
would
they
be
the same
perfect.
name. Yeah. Well, somebody shared the link. Let's see what you
Oh
have
yeah.
here.
Those are like bigger ones. And they're good, they're powerful, which we live in Pittsburgh, so we're similar conditions. We're fighting the light most of the year. It's one of the
Yeah.
get like 200 plus cloudy days a year, so we kind of have to have options for that. But truthfully, I mean, 95+% of what we do is still natural light, even on the cloudy days. That's what we're mostly using.
Yeah, I think like obviously ideally I would love to have a crazy setup. I think everybody would with that, you see the food bloggers post their videos behind the scenes of my glamorous day of my life and you're like, my setup looks nothing like this, but don't let that get you down because eventually you'll practice long enough, you'll learn all these tips and tricks and if you really want to pursue it, then you can actually put in, whatever saving of whatever money you have and buy that cool light that maybe you wanted, but you don't necessarily need it to get good shots. That's what I'm getting at. Because for the
Yeah, those
longest time I
setups
thought
scare me away from using artificial lighting because they look like way too professional. I'm like, yeah, I need something like one step. I don't want to go from 1 to 10.
yeah, exactly. And I'm not even there yet, so like I get stressed. More than 2 lights, I'm like, no. I can't. Because you already have so much to think about with just the food alone. Like I don't want to sit there and think about all the types of angles and shadows. Once you start with one light, right? Then you have to think about the other one. How does this one affect that one? It's like you don't want to, it takes the fun out of it for me, at least. So maybe one
I
day.
hear you. I'm all about cooking, and when it comes to photography, I just go by what appeals to me when I see it. I do not know the science behind it. It's like it looks good to me, then it should be a good shot. That's how I go by. So any
Exactly.
tip and everything is good.
That's so funny. But yeah, what's this? My behind the scenes includes a dog that is always about to be Oh yeah. That's cute. Oh, you have a little fan, Haley. That's it. It's usually me just panicking, and then my brother like awkwardly waiting at the door, like, can I enter the kitchen or not? Today I almost lost it. He wanted to make a smoothie. I was like, no, kitchen's off limits. Oh man. But yeah, just a little thing. You guys are not crazy. It's all in due time, just a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your amazing skills with us today. And I think especially the examples of like, natural light is fixed location. And so moving the food and moving the camera are kind of great tools to use as photographers. When you add the artificial lights, then you can move the light too. And that actually makes it
Yeah.
more complicated. So I think
Mhm.
for anybody who's new to it, focusing on move the food or move the camera are like
Yeah.
the best ways to deal with it.
Yeah. Start there.
Yeah.
Start small.
Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today. And anyone else out there who is watching the replay, if they have ideas for future lunch and learns, or if they have something they want to share with the group, reach out and we'll make it happen.
Ooh, sounds good. Thank you guys for listening and all the great questions.